Madam President, on a separate topic, this is a week of great global importance. World leaders from some of our closest and aspiring allies will gather this week in Washington for a momentous anniversary. 75 years ago, out of the ashes of World War II, 12 nations signed an agreement to establish the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, known as NATO. This historic alliance was bound together by a commitment to collective defense, enshrined under Article 5. Quite simply, an attack on one of the allies is an attack on all. This simple but powerful commitment after World War II to shared defense has helped keep peace in Europe for generations. It has deterred and protected member nations from Soviet threats of the past and now Russian threats of the present. And it's been so successful in its mission that additional members have regularly sought to join the alliance. It now includes 32 nations, the most recent being Sweden and Finland, two formidable allies who bring considerable capacity to the organization. We in the Senate voted 95-1 on a bipartisan basis to ratify their entry. Many nations previously under Soviet domination have joined, vowing that they'll never live under Russian tyranny again. I know one in particular. My mother's homeland of Lithuania is a country that I've been lucky enough to visit before I was elected to Congress and since. I saw Soviet repression at its worst in 1978 and now see democracy at its best in this current situation. Under the leadership of my friend and former President Valdis Adamkus, Lithuania joined NATO along with its Baltic neighbors, Latvia and Estonia, in 2004. 2 years ago, President Adamkus was honored by the Lithuanian Parliament for his contribution to the nation's integration into NATO and the European Union. Today, Lithuania is one of the alliance's most outspoken voices. I am so proud of Lithuania, a nation small in population and size, but large in terms of its impact on the world, with the courage they have shown over and over again. They have vocally supported Ukraine, they have welcomed Belarusian and Russian democratic voices, and they hosted last year's NATO summit, which I was honored to attend. My mother would be proud of her birth country. This week, the Senate Baltic Caucus co-chair, Senator Grassley, and I will introduce a resolution recognizing the strong U.S.-Baltic relationship and important contributions these nations have made to NATO. In recent years, I've had the honor of joining several of my colleagues, senators led by Senator Shaheen and Tillis, to attend the annual NATO summit. What struck me at these summit meetings was the sustained resolve and common purpose in defeating Russia in war against Ukraine. Our NATO allies, many former captives of the Soviet Union, have enduring memories of that experience. They are determined to not allow Russians' imperial actions in Ukraine to prevail. I want to recognize President Joe Biden's clear-eyed leadership, galvanizing and reinvigorating the critical NATO alliance and its support from Ukraine. Let's put the cards on the table. Under former President Trump, the future of NATO was in doubt. The NATO members did not know if the alliance would continue to exist, let alone rise to any challenge. When President Biden took office, that changed immediately. He made this alliance alive again at a time when it was needed now more than ever, with the situation in Ukraine. To expand to include Finland and Sweden was a dramatic move forward. Hundreds of miles of Finnish border, for example, with Russia are now part of the NATO alliance on the Finnish side. I spoke to the man who was Niinisto, who was president of Finland, about the decision of his nation after so many decades in the Cold War to finally step out and join NATO against Russia. He said, Senator, it came down to a telephone conversation I had with Vladimir Putin. I called him to tell him that Finland was going to join NATO. Putin said to me, you don't have to worry about us. Don't join NATO. You don't need to. And President Niinisto said, I told him I could no longer trust him after what he did in Poland and Georgia and other places. That just shows how important the NATO alliance is, that a country as substantial and with a storied history like Finland would decide to step forward and finally enlist their support for the NATO alliance. It speaks well of the alliance, what it has achieved, and what it can in the future. And it speaks well of President Biden's leadership. in expanding NATO at a critical moment in history. Despite Putin's warnings, paranoia to the contrary, NATO is not a threat to Russia. It will defend every inch of members' territory from Russia or any other attacker. Putin's colossal strategic blunder in Ukraine cost the lives of more than 100,000 Russians so far, and it's devastated Russians standing around the world, leaving Russia no other choice than to beg for weapons from, of all places, North Korea and Iran. Much to his chagrin, Putin's senseless invasion strengthened and expanded NATO, and recent summits have included historic participation of several countries from the Asian-Pacific region, strengthening the alliance even more. I believe Ukraine's future rests ultimately within NATO, and until then, the United States and our allies must continue to support the defense against Russia. I think Lithuanian President Nausėda argued this well. Europeans understand that Ukraine's fight is their fight, and it's our fight too. I share that sentiment. So on this 75th anniversary, let's recommit to this historic alliance that has served the world so well in maintaining stability and freedom, and let us continue to work toward peace. Madam President, I yield the floor.